Welcome to Giants Latest. The quarterback chaos continues as now the Giants have announced that they are bringing in Jameis Winston for a visit on Tuesday. So now the Giants have basically covered off on, after this visit, all four veteran quarterbacks. They are still working through Aaron Rodgers, which we're going to talk about in a minute. They have brought in Joe Flacco and Russell Wilson and now Jameis Winston. So we know that Joe is adamant about the veteran quarterback position, so it's coming. It's going to be one of those guys. It's just a matter of who. So with that being said, let's get right into the Aaron Rodgers talk because the news about Rodgers is aplenty. So let's talk about it. So what I saw this morning on Monday morning is this, that Aaron Rodgers is deciding between the Steelers and the Giants, and he's 50-50 between both of them. The Vikings are not in the equation at all, okay? So that's what I saw. Then about an hour later, I see another message from a Vikings beat writer who I guess was on the radio this morning who said that it's Aaron Rodgers who's waiting on the Vikings, not vice versa. AKA, what it sounds like is he doesn't have any type of offer or anything from the Vikings. So that leads me to believe that the Vikings are pretty much out of the equation, which I think is very interesting because they only have JJ McCarthy on the roster right now, that they lost Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. So I assume that they're going to bring in some sort of veteran quarterback, but who knows? Maybe they're not. Not my team. It doesn't really matter. But it would have affected, I think, the veteran quarterback market, other than the fact that I have not seen any reports that the Vikings have brought in any of those other quarterbacks that I mentioned, Russ Wilson, Jameis Winston, or Joe Flacco. And it sounds like the Rodgers thing is not it. So the last thing that I will say about Rodgers today is this, is that according to Pat McAfee this morning, he thinks that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a decision by tomorrow. And all I have to say is he better, okay? Enough is enough. I am glad that the Giants are doing their due diligence and they are bringing in other veteran quarterbacks as they should. But I still have a problem with the fact that they are letting Aaron Rodgers run the show. We are not the Jets, okay? We need to stop operating like we think we're the Jets. It's bad enough that we share a building with them. We share all of these different places with them. You know what we don't need to share? The same sentiment that we're going to let 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers run the show, and he's going to be the one who's the only one who makes decisions, okay? John Mara and Joe Schoen need to sit down and say, this man has a deadline, okay? At the end of the day, we're talking about work. You know what happens in the real world when you miss a deadline? You either get in trouble or you get fired. It's not okay. So this is also real world. It's a job we're talking about. And if you don't have a deadline or you pass that deadline, we're moving on to one of the three other veteran quarterbacks that we have brought into the building. That is what the Giants need to do, okay? Stop acting like Aaron Rodgers is the Lord and Savior and he's going to turn this franchise around in 1 year, and paying him $40 million for a 41-year-old quarterback is going to fix everything, acting like it's going to save Joe Schoen and Brian Dable's jobs, and acting like it is going to just solve all of their problems, that we're just going to be a good football team this year and we're just going to let Aaron Rodgers do whatever he wants. That is unacceptable. Like I said, we are not the Jets. We don't ever want to be the Jets. It's bad enough that we're going after their quarterback. Enough is enough, okay? Figure it out, give him a deadline, and let's move on, because I am so sick of talking about this. And one of the other problems that I have is that now I'm like, if Aaron Rodgers ends up being the quarterback of the Giants, this is what we're going to deal with all year, is nonsense. And I don't want any part of it. Moving along, the Giants brought in a veteran wide receiver for a visit, which I thought was interesting only because I didn't really see anything like that coming. Like I always talk about, you know, what the roster looks like now versus a week from now versus 3 months from now. It's always going to be fluid and continually changing. But I did think it was interesting that they brought in wide receiver Zach Pascal for a visit. So here's what you need to know a little bit about him. He's basically would be a fifth or sixth spot in a wide receiver room, yet he is productive on game day. So the way that I see it is that he is basically Cole Beasley, and what the Giants wanted Cole Beasley to be, except it didn't work out. I think he got injured in camp, and that's why they ended up cutting him. But I kind of envision, if they signed Pascal, to basically be Cole Beasley of a year or two ago when he was also on the Giants. So it would be a veteran minimum deal and just building up the wide receiver room and just kind of seeing what he can do. Listen, as we talk about a lot, it needs to all about be competition. It needs to be all about competition, okay? I want multiple players fighting for their lives and let the best man win to be the starter. That's what it should be. It's not, oh, Kayvon Thibodeau, we drafted you 5 overall, so every single week you're going to be the starter. No, Kayvon should be the starter because he's the best player on the field in that position. So we've talked a lot about Abdul Carter and whether or not, the Giants, if they will make that call at 3 if he's available, or if they will trade Kayvon, what they will do. But if you bring in someone like Abdul Carter, and if Zach Pascal ends up being, a better wide receiver than Jalen Hyatt, then he makes the roster and you trade Hyatt, or Hyatt becomes a practice squad guy. Like, you just have to do what you have to do to win and to build a good football team. And, the more competition, the better. Like I said, let the best man win. One other thing from Art Stapleton about Pascal, he's traditionally been a willing and solid blocker on the edges in the run game. He's played more than 50% of the snaps on special teams. So we've talked a lot about special teams in the last week or so. The Giants have brought in a couple linebackers, so why not bring in another veteran wide receiver who also can be a special teamer? So I will keep you guys posted if they end up signing him, but the last I saw is that they just brought him in for a visit. Now, let's move along and talk about the draft, because I am at the point where as the days goes on and the more that I converse with other Giants fans and kind of get the feel of what they're thinking, of what they have seen that maybe I haven't seen and whatever, the more I am terrified that this draft is going to be a repeat of last year. And what I mean by that is that the Giants will have 2 years in a row where they were awful and had a losing record, had a top 10 draft pick, and will still not get a quarterback. Especially, it won't be the quarterback that they want. It's exactly what happened last year. They tried to trade up from 6 to 4 with the Patriots so they could get Drake May. And the Patriots said, nah, bro, we want him. Or was it 3? Either way, it was, no, we want him. He's our quarterback. If we didn't need a quarterback, we would trade with you, no problem. But this is our guy. We are not moving from him. So that's what happened last year. I think this year is going to be a repeat. And these are all the reasons why I think that. Number one, let's start with the Titans. They don't like Will Levis. It is so obvious. The way that they talk about him, the way that they just have so clearly moved on from him. He is not going to be the starter. And now we are 6 days into free agency. They have not brought in a veteran quarterback. So Will Levis is the only quarterback on their roster, which in my opinion signals Cam Ward is our guy, or Shedeur Sanders, could be either one of them at that point. But I don't think that they are going to move from one. I think that they are taking a quarterback and that he's going to be their starter. Will Levis is going to be the backup, and they're going to say, we'll worry about a third string over the summer and we'll pick up someone who gets cut. So that's my concern for them. Let's talk about the Browns, because I think I'm even more concerned about the Browns. So I was right about this, about what happened with Deshaun Watson. God only knows how the guy got injured again, but he is supposedly out for the entire 2025 season, which I could have sworn that I saw back in February and then was like, I don't know if I'm making this up, but I'm pretty sure I saw it somewhere. But anyway, so Deshaun Watson is basically going to be inactive for the 2025 season, which means that the quarterback on their roster is one quarterback, Kenny Pickett. The second thing, they brought in Russ Wilson for a visit. Even if they sign Russ Wilson and they have Russ Wilson and Kenny Pickett, you still want a third quarterback, right? Maybe they would do what the Titans could do and bring in someone in the summer, but I don't buy it. And I don't buy it for this reason. 2 reasons. Number one, there's been a lot of talks that they really like Shedeur Sanders, and they also like Cam Ward. So I think whoever's available at 2, they're getting, but I think it's going to be Sanders. Number 2, Myles Garrett went on a podcast, and listen, he could be bluffing. I think for these players, money is first, actually winning games is second. Let's be honest, all right? Because he talked all this crap about how he couldn't wait to get out of Cleveland. And they said, nah, it's okay. We're cool with overpaying people. We did it with Deshaun. Let's do it with you too. $40 million a year. He's not going anywhere, clearly. So after all that talk about, I want to trade, I want out, he got paid, he's staying put. So on this podcast, he said that he really liked their plan for quarterback. Now, because they're in the 2 spot, Darius Slayton also said he really liked the Giants' plan for quarterback, but the Giants aren't in the 2 spot. So the Browns are now in a position where they're going to be able to draft a quarterback. So you look at their quarterback room, you look at what they did or the lack of what they did in free agency, and I think at some point you just have to look at it and say, well, they probably wouldn't take Abdul Carter because they just signed Myles Garrett, and they're going to go a quarterback. So now I'm really worried that the Giants at 3 are going to miss out on a quarterback in back-to-back drafts after having losing seasons, after being the most embarrassing football team in the NFL last year. They go 3-14, and then they beat the Colts in a meaningless Week 17 game, and now we're not going to get a quarterback. And I swear to God, if Joe Shane picks Jackson Dart at the 3rd overall pick, I am out. I am a Lions fan. I'm rooting for the Lions in 2025 because that is unacceptable and should be a fireable offense. I like Jackson Dart. He is a round 2. Maybe you move into the round 1 to get him. You do not pick him at 3. I will have a lot of hope stored in me if at the 3rd overall pick with the quarterbacks are gone, Joe Shane picks Abdul Carter. He could pick Travis Hunter. I don't care. I mean, I would prefer I would prefer Abdul Carter, but if they get Hunter, I'm cool with that because he's going to be a day 1 starter for the Giants. So that also works out. But I am very concerned that this is going to be a repeat of 2024, and I'm very nervous about it. So if you guys feel otherwise, please let me know in the comments. Maybe, if you have a different idea that's going to make me feel better, let me know because I could use it. And stay tuned because we're going to have a quarterback at some point, right? The news is coming.